He was only 5. They found him in the neighbor's backyard. Cold. Still. Gone. A baby boy named Elyjiah Hearn. California. 2025. He should have been safe. Playing. Laughing. But the person who took him was somebody he already knew. You're watching At Unbelievable True Story, where we only tell real stories. Not to scare you, but to prepare you. Here's what happened. It was a quiet afternoon in Stockton, California. Elyjiah went outside to ride his little bike. 5 years old, full of life, but he never made it back inside. The family searched everywhere. The block, the park, the alley. Then police found him, right behind the neighbor's house. That neighbor was the one trusted to watch him. And here's the part that chills me. Every 40 seconds, a child is taken in America, and 80% of the time, it's by someone the family already knows. We don't like to think about it, but the truth is, most danger is not from strangers. It's from the people we let close. That's why we linked a family safety course in the description and first pin comment. It teaches kids and parents what to do when something feels wrong. How to escape, how to speak up, how to protect each other. Because sometimes one move is all it takes to save a life. Now stay with me, because we're about to break down who did it, how they got away, and the one mistake that changed everything. Let's get into the full story. It happened in Stockton, California. A regular afternoon. Warm, sunny, the kind of day kids run outside with no coat. The kind of day moms crack open the window so they can hear the laughter. Elyjiah was that laughter. He loved Paw Patrol. He loved drawing superheroes with crayons. And he loved riding that little bike. His mom said he'd ride it up and down the sidewalk like he owned the street. 5 years old, but he had that kind of energy, that kind of spirit. Then, just like that, he was gone. The search started fast. Neighbors came out. Police showed up. You could hear people yelling his name. Elyjiah, Elyjiah. His mom ran door to door, knocking, screaming, crying. Her baby boy was missing. Minutes turned to hours. Every second felt like fire. Because here's the truth. In the U.S., a child goes missing every 40 seconds. In Quebec, 2023, that's the reality. And that day, it was Elyjiah. They found him later in the neighbor's backyard. And the hardest part? It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a ghost figure hiding in a van. It was somebody trusted. Police said the neighbor had been close with the family. The kind of person you wouldn't suspect. The kind of person you'd let wave at your kid. But that trust? That's what killed him. Now let me pause here, because I want you to feel this the way his mama felt it. She thought he was safe. She thought he was just outside, laughing, being a boy. Then in one blink, her whole world cracked open. Can you imagine running outside, seeing that little bike on its side, calling his name, thinking he's just hiding, and then realizing he's not hiding? He's gone. That's the moment her knees buckled. That's the scream the whole block heard. You know why this hurts even more? Because Elyjiah wasn't just some name in the news. He was real. He had a favorite snack, peanut butter crackers. He had a little blanket he couldn't sleep without. He was learning to write his name. Big letters, crooked lines. But he was proud. This boy had dreams, even if he didn't know the word dreams yet. He wanted to be a superhero. He wanted to protect people. And then the one who was supposed to protect him betrayed him. The police report said it plain. They found him unresponsive, behind the neighbor's house. That image, it burned into the whole community. A child, stolen, destroyed, by someone living right there. Now I gotta tell you something real. Most people freeze in moments like this. Not because they don't love their kid, not because they don't care, but because we're not trained for it. We're trained for school. We're trained for jobs. But nobody trains us for this. And here's the truth. 80% of child abuse cases involve someone the victim already knows. CDC 2022. That's the scary part. Not strangers, not shadows, but the people close. That's why, in the description and the first pin comment, we linked a family safety course. It's real training for kids and parents. How to notice when something feels wrong. How to escape. How to speak up. How to protect each other. 1 hour. At home. Because sometimes that's the difference between life and death. But back to Elyjiah. Because this isn't just a safety lesson. This is his life. His story. The police locked that neighbor up. The charges? Murder. Child abuse. The details too heavy to even say out loud. The block where it happened will never be the same. Kids don't ride outside the way they used to. Parents don't wave at neighbors the same way anymore. Because how do you trust again when the danger lived next door? Picture it. Blue and red lights flashing across the street. Yellow tape stretched tight around the block. And neighbors standing outside, whispering, scared. The sound of mothers screaming still echoing in the air. That was the scene in Stockton, California, February 2025, the night police found 5-year-old Elyjiah Hearn in the neighbor's backyard. This story is based on real events reported by police and news sources. Now let's rewind just a little, because if you want to understand how this all went down, you gotta walk with me through that day. It started like any other Saturday. Elyjiah woke up early, ate a bowl of Lucky Charms, milk on his chin, cartoon on the TV. His mom said he was smiling big that morning. She told him, "Don't go far. Stay close." He nodded like a 5-year-old does. Because at 5, you believe grown folks will keep you safe. You believe monsters live in movies, not next door. Around 2 p.m., Elyjiah went outside. He hopped on that red bike with the training wheels. The sun was bright. The street was calm. Kids playing. A dog barking somewhere down the block. He rode circles in front of his house. Up the sidewalk. Back down again. Then he went just a little farther. Past the fence. Past the corner. And that's when it happened. The neighbor, let's call him what he is, the suspect. A man everyone thought was harmless. He was in his yard. Smiled at Elyjiah. Probably said, "Hey buddy, come here." And Elyjiah, he trusted. Because why wouldn't he? This wasn't some stranger. This was someone his mom had waved to. Someone who lived right there. Somebody who blended in. That's the part that burns. It wasn't force at first. It was trust. That's how he lured him. Police believe he brought Elyjiah into his house. Maybe with candy. Maybe with a toy. Something small. Because to a 5-year-old, that's enough. And then, the worst happened. Behind closed doors. And when it was over, he dumped in the yard. Like trash. Now let me tell you about the moment police showed up. First, they searched the streets. Checked the park. Checked the creek nearby. Nothing. Then they went door to door. Knocking. Asking. Looking in backyards. And when they hit that neighbor's house, everything shifted. They said the man looked nervous. Sweating. Shaking. He said he didn't see Elyjiah. But police noticed the backyard gate unlocked. They went in, and there he was. Little Elyjiah. That's when time froze. One officer carried his body out, wrapped in a blanket. Neighbors gasped. Mothers grabbed their kids tighter. And Elyjiah's mom? She collapsed right there in the street, screaming her baby's name. The arrest was fast. That man was handcuffed on the spot, charged with murder, child abuse, and something else, betrayal. Because the whole block trusted him. Now listen, police don't play with cases like this. When a child dies, it's all hands on deck. Detectives, crime scene units, neighbors giving statements. They searched his house, took evidence bags out by the dozens. Computers, clothes, anything with DNA. Every corner of that house became a crime scene. And you know what broke people? He didn't even try to run. Didn't pack a bag. Didn't leave town. He just stayed there. Like nothing happened. Like he thought nobody would find out. But here's the truth. Evil always leaves a trail. And his trail, it led straight to Elyjiah. The community snapped. People were angry. They stood outside that house, yelling at him as police dragged him out. "Monster! Coward! Why'd you hurt that baby?" And it wasn't just anger. It was fear. Because if it could happen there, it could happen anywhere. Now let's talk about Elyjiah's family. His mom. She said she felt guilty. Like maybe she should have been watching closer. But let me tell you something right now. This was not her fault. This wasn't about bad parenting. This was about evil hiding in plain sight. The kind of evil that tricks everybody. His mom said she trusted that man. She never thought he would hurt her boy. That's what tore her up most. She kept asking, why? Why him? He was just a baby. Police started building their case. Every camera on the block got pulled. Every phone call, every witness, every scrap of evidence. Because in cases like this, you only get one chance to get justice. Neighbors told police they saw Elyjiah ride past the house. Some heard a noise. Some saw him wave. And then nothing. That silence, that's when it all happened. The medical examiner did the autopsy. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. A 5-year-old boy, beaten by someone he trusted. Let that sink in. He didn't just take him, he destroyed him. Now, trials don't happen overnight. But prosecutors in Stockton moved fast. They said they'd seek the maximum sentence, because no jury in the world was going to let this man walk. But still, Elyjiah was gone. No sentence could bring him back. I want you to hold onto this image. That red bike, still sitting in the grass, wheels spinning, a silent witness to everything. Because that's the picture that haunted the block. That bike said it all. A child should have come home, but he didn't. When police stepped into that neighbor's house, it was like walking into a nightmare. Dirty carpet, old food on the counter, curtains drawn tight. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the evidence. Because every room told a story, and none of it was good. Detectives bagged everything. Clothes with stains, a hammer on the floor, a computer glowing in the dark. They said it smelled wrong, like fear and smoke mixed together. One officer later said, "You could feel the evil in there." And you know what's crazy? The man acted calm, like nothing was wrong, like a 5-year-old wasn't found dead in his own backyard. Now let me be real. This is the part of the story that makes you mad. Because neighbors said they trusted this man. He fixed bikes for the kids sometimes. He waved when folks walked by. He even sat at block parties, eating hot dogs like he was family. But behind that smile, something sick was hiding. Police pulled his phone records, and there it was. Searches you don't ever want to see. Things no decent human would type. Stuff that showed he had been thinking about hurting kids for a long time. So let's be clear. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't losing his temper. This was planned. And then came the biggest shock. Police found little drawings tucked away. Not from Elyjiah, from the man himself. Drawings of children. Notes about trust. Like he was studying how to trick kids. That's what investigators knew. This wasn't his first thought. It was just his first time getting caught. Now here's the painful truth. When something like this happens, the whole community feels dirty. Parents looked at each other different. Kids weren't allowed outside anymore. Every neighbor started asking, "How didn't we see it? How didn't we know?" But here's the answer. Because monsters don't wear masks. They wear smiles. The funeral for Elyjiah broke the city. Tiny casket, flowers piled high. People packed the church until the doors couldn't close. His mom stood over him, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "I'm sorry, baby." You ever seen a whole room cry? That's what it was. No words, just tears and anger. And through it all, that man sat in a jail cell, waiting, silent. Prosecutors charged him with murder, kidnapping, and special circumstances for killing a child. That means one thing in California. He could face life without parole. Now, trials take time. Lawyers argue. Judges set dates. But the evidence was heavy. There was no way out. The blood on his clothes, the phone searches, the backyard. It all told the same story. And every time he went to court, Elyjiah's family sat there. His mom, his grandma, his cousins, holding each other, staring him down. Let me stop here and tell you something real. A case like this, it doesn't just kill a child. It kills trust. It kills community. Because now parents don't let their kids ride bikes alone. They don't wave at neighbors the same. They live with fear in their chest. And it's not paranoia. It's fact. According to the CDC, 2022, 80% of child abuse cases involve someone the victim already knows. That's the truth. It's not the dark alley. It's not this stranger danger we grew up hearing. It's the people inside our circle. That's why this story matters. Because Elyjiah's face could be any child's face. His laughter could be your child's laughter. And the danger could be just one fence away. Now, police didn't stop at the crime scene. They dug into his past. Old records. Old neighbors. And guess what? There were whispers. People said he was weird around kids. That he gave off a vibe. But nobody said anything. Nobody called it in. Because people don't want to believe the worst. But here's the problem. Silence lets evil grow. And in this case, silence killed. Elyjiah's story is a warning. And that's why, in the description and first pin comment, we linked a family safety course. It's not about selling. It's about saving. It teaches kids what to do when something feels wrong. It teaches parents how to spot the signs. And most important, It shows how to break the silence. Because silence is deadly. Now, back to the case. The prosecutors built it strong. Every witness, every photo, and when it goes to trial, the jury will see everything. But here's the question. Will justice ever feel like enough? Because at the end of the day, Elyjiah is still gone. His red bike still sits in the grass. His mom still cries herself to sleep. And a whole block still feels haunted. But wait, there's one more part you need to hear. One detail police found in that man's past that shook the city even harder. Stay with me, because what they uncovered proved this wasn't just about Elyjiah. It was bigger, darker, and had been hiding for years. When police started digging into that man's past, things got darker. Much darker. Because see, monsters don't just wake up one morning and say, "I'm evil now." Nah, it builds. It festers. And when cops pulled his old records, they saw the smoke before the fire. Turns out, years back, he had been investigated. Nothing major on paper. Suspicious behavior. Too close to kids. Neighbors said they saw him hanging around the park when he didn't have no kids of his own. But nothing stuck. No charges. Just whispers. And whispers, they don't make it to court. So he kept walking free. Now let me be real with you. This is what makes people mad. How many times do we hear this? How come he wasn't locked up before? How come nobody stopped him? Because the truth is ugly. Until a kid gets hurt, the system don't always move. And by then, it's too late. Police also found old complaints from women. They said he was strange, that he'd stare too long, follow too close. One even said he tried to lure her little brother with candy years ago. But again, no charges, just notes in a file. And that file sat, while Elyjiah lived right next door. Now, picture being his mom and hearing that. Finding out this man had a history. Finding out people felt something was off. Finding out the system had signs, but didn't act. That's rage. That's heartbreak. That's the kind of thing that makes you scream in court. And that's what happened. At one of the hearings, Elyjiah's mom stood up. She yelled at him, "Why my baby? What?" The judge had to stop the session because her pain was too loud, too real. And who could blame her? She lost her boy, and now she had to sit in the same room as the man who took him. The community kept showing up too, outside the courthouse, holding signs, lighting candles, justice for Elyjiah. And it wasn't just about one child. It was about every parent scared this could be theirs. Every neighbor who suddenly looked at their street different. One woman said on the news, "I used to let my son ride his bike until the streetlights came on. Not anymore. Not after Elyjiah." That's how trust dies. Not in a bang, but in silence. Now let's walk into the courtroom, because trials are like plays. Everybody has a role. The judge in the black robe, the jury staring blank, the lawyers standing tall, and in the middle, the suspect. No smile now, no wave, just cold eyes. The prosecutor laid it out. This man lured a 5-year-old. This man betrayed trust. This man killed. Every word hit like a hammer, and the jury listened. But here's the crazy part. His lawyer tried to argue mental illness, tried to say he wasn't in his right mind, like that would excuse it, but the jury wasn't buying it, because the evidence was too heavy. The searches, the drawings, the backyard, it all screamed one thing. He knew what he was doing. Now let me tell you something funny in a dark way. When the prosecutor read out his internet searches, the whole courtroom gasped. Even the defense lawyer shook his head. Because sometimes evil is so plain, you can't even dress it up in excuses. But the hardest part was when they showed Elyjiah's red bike in court. They rolled it in, silent, still with dirt on the wheels. That bike said more than any lawyer ever could. It said, a child was here, and now he's not. And let me pause here, because I want you to feel what justice looks like. It doesn't feel like joy. It doesn't feel like celebration. It feels heavy, because nothing brings him back. Not guilty verdicts. Not life sentences. Nothing. Now, while all this was going on, Elyjiah's family tried to hold each other up. His grandma cooked meals for the other kids. His aunt stayed with his mom at night, so she wasn't alone. But every room in that house felt empty. Every toy on the floor felt like a ghost. That's what grief is. It's not just crying. It's the quiet after. The silence in a child's bedroom. The bed still made. The drawing still on the fridge. And here's where I tell you something true. Grief doesn't end when the trial does. It doesn't end when the cameras leave. It stays. It lives in the bones. But this case wasn't done yet, because police kept digging. And what they found on his computer, it showed something even darker. When cops pulled that man's computer, it was like opening the gates of hell. They found files, pictures, searches no human should ever type. It wasn't just one mistake. It wasn't just one bad night. It was a pattern, years of sickness. And that's when it hit everybody. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some snap. He had been living in the dark a long time. The prosecutor said, "This man is a predator. He hides in plain sight. He waits. He plans. And then he strikes." And the jury leaned in. Because now, the truth wasn't just about Elyjiah. It was about the danger he could have kept being. How many more kids would have been next? But let's bring it back to Elyjiah's mom. Because while lawyers argued and jurors took notes, she sat there holding her boy's picture. Every day, same photo, her baby smiling with those bright eyes. She wanted the jury to look at that photo. Not just papers, not just evidence. Her son, her life. And when she finally got to speak in court, the victim impact statement, her words broke the room. She said, "My son's bed is still made. His shoes are still by the door. I still wake up listening for his laugh. But he's not there, and he's never coming back." You could hear sniffles all across the courtroom. Even the judge had to pause. When the verdict came, it was quick. Guilty. And not just guilty. On every count, the judge said, "You will never see freedom again." And just like that, life without parole. Now, I know what you're thinking. Good. He deserves worse. And you're right. But let me tell you something about justice. It ain't sweet. It ain't pretty. It don't feel like victory. It feels like breathing after drowning. You're alive, but you still swallowed water. After court ended, Elyjiah's family walked out together. But walking out didn't mean walking free. Because grief? That's a life sentence too. His mom still had to come home to that empty house. Still had to pass that bike leaning against the porch. Still had to answer the little cousins asking, "Where's Eli?" That don't end with a gavel. The community tried to heal. They painted murals. They planted a tree in his name. They lit candles on the anniversary. But the shadow stayed. Parents locked doors tighter. Kids weren't allowed out alone anymore. Trust gone. And let me say this plain. What happened to Elyjiah? It wasn't just one family's tragedy. It was a warning. Because evil don't wear horns. It don't walk around with a sign on its chest. It wears a smile. It waves hello. It's the neighbor you thought was safe. That's the part that hurts the most. Now, some folks might ask, how do you keep going after something like this? And the truth is, you don't. Not in the same way. You learn to carry the pain. You learn to live with the hole. Elyjiah's mom said it best in one interview. She said, "I don't move on. I move with him. Every step, he's with me. Every breath, I say his name." That's how you survive when the worst has already happened. But let me end this story where it began. With Elyjiah, not the monster, not the trial, not the darkness. Elyjiah was 5. He loved his red bike. He laughed so hard he'd fall over. He trusted people too much. Because that's what kids do. And that's what was stolen. Not just a life, but joy, but innocence. So if you remember anything, remember this. Look out for the kids around you. Ask questions. Trust your gut when something feels off. Because monsters hide in plain sight. And Elyjiah's story, it should never, ever happen again.